15 Biggest Myths About Sunscreen and Sun Safety. When it comes to safe tanning, there seems to be a major block in the truth about sunscreen. While it's great to get out and enjoy the summer sun, there are some major misconceptions about sunscreen and sun safety. Don't get us wrong, we're not saying you shouldn't wear sunscreen. It's quite the opposite, actually. However, knowing more about it and how to properly use it can save you a world of pain and possible health complications, so be sure to apply these 15 truths about sunscreen. 1. A base tan is not adequate sun protection. You often hear from friends and family going on a tropical vacation that they're working on their base tan, and that somehow they'll be invincible to the sun after they achieve this. Reader's Digest says there is no such thing as a safe tan, even when you think having darker skin from the tanning bed acts as a shield. A tan is literally your body's response to being injured by UV exposure, notes the source. This UV light causes cells to produce more melanin, skin pigment, but this is a sign that damage has already been done, not protection against future sun exposure, it adds. Okay, that's not entirely true. The source notes a base tan has a sun protection factor, SPF, of about 4, while a white t-shirt provides about SPF 7. 2. Chemicals in sunscreen are not proven dangerous. Reader's Digest also notes that some people skip wearing sunscreen, falsely believing that the contents will do them more harm than UV rays from the sun. This is false, it says, despite reports about sunscreens being cancer-causing. While this is a controversial area, the doctors we interviewed agreed that there are no studies that demonstrate this, it says. The source says a study on rats suggested oxybenzone used in many sunscreens can produce cell-damaging free radicals, but it says there's no published research linking it to skin cancer. 3. Skin cancer is not easily beatable. Along the same lines as avoiding sunscreen, some people think that getting skin cancer is no big deal, and they can easily get past it. As the Cancer Council in Australia notes, skin cancer treatment can be much more serious than simply having a lesion burnt off. Check out this article on 12 skin cancer symptoms that are more than skin deep. It notes that skin cancer can involve surgery, chemotherapy, and can result in permanent skin scarring. Cancer cells can also spread to other parts of your body, making it potentially deadly. Turns out that taking a few minutes to slather on sunscreen is worth the effort. 4. You can get burnt any time of day. It's true that the biggest risk of getting burned by the sun is between around 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., according to Reader's Digest. However, the source adds, dermatologists were unanimous that tanning at any hour of the day isn't safe. It explains that while UVB rays peak at midday, there are also UV rays, that can also cause skin aging and some skin cancers, continue to beam down throughout the entire day. 5. Sunscreen above SPF 15 is useful. Reader's Digest says the FDA is still debating the merits of super high SPFs, but many dermatologists agree there are distinct differences between SPF 15, 30, and 50, especially because we're just so bad at applying sunscreen properly. It warns that because people are often sloppy with applying sunscreen, an SPF 50 can actually provide the protection of an SPF 20. The problems are that people don't apply enough to begin with, and then don't follow directions for reapplying it throughout the day, especially when you're at the beach or pool. Believing anything above SPF 15 is pointless is not true. 6. Dark complexions still require sunscreen. This is a potentially dangerous myth that Reader's Digest stops in its tracks. While people with naturally darker skin may have a lower risk of skin cancer, they're not immune, says the source. What makes it worse is that skin cancer can be diagnosed later in people of color, possibly due to the misconception that they can't get skin cancer, it adds. Cancer is harder to treat the later it's diagnosed. One famous example provided by the source is Bob Marley, who died from melanoma, a type of skin cancer, that started on his toe that was mistaken for a soccer injury. 7. Temperature and UV levels are not the same thing. Many people stick their head outside to gauge the temperature, falsely believing that sets the bar for sunburn risk, says BC Cancer. Many people think that if it's cold, sunscreen is pointless, it explains. The source says it's true there's a much lower risk if there's cloud over, but if you can see the sun there's a risk. So even if it doesn't feel like sunburn territory out there, if it's bright, take the proper precautions. 8. Your skin can be damaged on cloudy days. Further to that last point, you still should take precautions, even if the sun is hiding behind clouds, says the Cancer Council. That's because, as we noted, UV rays and not temperature cause sun damage. A cool or overcast day in summer can have similar UV levels to a warm, sunny day, it explains. UV rays can penetrate certain clouds, and may be even more intense due to reflection off the clouds, warns the source. 9. Makeup is not adequate sun protection. Many people who regularly apply makeup avoid sunscreen because they figure if their makeup indicates an SPF number, they're good to go to the beach for the day without a worry. However, the Cancer Council says unless your makeup is SPF 30 or higher, you should apply sunscreen before applying the makeup. Foundations and moisturizers that contain sunscreen are fine when outside for short periods, such as a quick trip to the shops at lunchtime, it says. However, if you're planning to make a day of it outside, you should supplement the SPF makeup with sunscreen and reapply it every 2 hours, it adds. 10. You don't need to burn to get vitamin D. You don't need to see a suntan, or a sunburn, to know you've received the right amount of vitamin D, says the Cancer Council. It says being outside for just a few minutes when the UV level is 3 or higher is adequate for the body to produce required daily levels of the vitamin. It explains that at least in Australia you don't generally need sunscreen if the UV levels are under 3. That means you can take advantage of those days to get out there and soak up some rays without as much worry about skin damage. But don't gamble if you are not sure about whether it's safe to be without sunscreen. If you believe you are at risk of vitamin D deficiency, speak to your doctor, it advises. 11. Past damage doesn't mean you don't need sunscreen. As SunSmart points out, just because you had some sunburns as a youngster, doesn't mean you can avoid sunscreen now. This isn't chickenpox we're talking about. The source says having excessive exposure to UV rays in your first 10 years will increase your chance of developing melanoma. What happens after this is also very important. You can still minimize further risk at any age by taking the right sun protection approach, it adds. 12. It's not just about your face. Many people focus on covering up their face with sunscreen to avoid getting burned, falsely believing that's enough to sidestep skin cancer. But as Reader's Digest points out, skin cancer loves anywhere the sun touches. That means while your face won't get damaged, you're opening the door to skin cancer, and signs of aging, on your arms, legs, chest, and everywhere else, it adds. Sun is the greatest threat to your skin's health and youth, adds the article. 13. Windburns are sunburns. SunSmart says a lot of people pass off redness on their face after a day outside as windburn, which sounds plausible, except windburn doesn't exist, according to the source. The rash on your face is the result of being hit by UV rays, not high winds, it adds. This can happen even on cloudy days, it adds, which may lead some people to believe it must have been the wind's fault. 14. Sunscreen has an expiry date. Contrary to popular belief, that bottle of sunscreen does expire, even if you think you've stored it in a safe place. The Washington Post weighed into this topic, noting that like spoiled milk, expired sunscreen isn't much good. There is in fact an expiration date on sunscreen bottles, and you should pay attention to them like you would food, it explains. However, it cites a study that shows about 33% of people don't check sunscreen expiry dates at all. Sunscreens expire because their ingredients deteriorate over time, losing their power, it adds. Not only might the expired product be ineffective, in some cases it may even be unsafe, it adds. 15. You're probably not allergic to sunscreen. Many women in particular are skipping sunscreen because they think they're allergic to it, says GoodHousekeeping.com. The truth is that your skin can probably tolerate it, notes the source. Researchers have found that very few people who think they're allergic actually are, says the source. It says if your skin stings from one brand, then simply switch to another brand that has different ingredients.